Yeah, I'm not gonna be able to finish the entire series for my season previews for this upcoming NBA season, so I'm just gonna cram all the other 22 teams into this video. Sorry for the people who wanted more in-depth videos on them, but I had to go on a little break, and plus, I was getting a little tired of making these videos. But anyways, you already know the drill. Just go ahead and hit that like button, as it'll help out my channel a lot, and it helps YouTube's algorithm to put out my videos a lot more frequently. Don't forget to subscribe if you're new and turn on your post notifications to never miss any of my uploads, as we are so close to 10 subscribers. Comment down below what other videos y'all would like to see, as I try to respond to every other comment. But with that being said, let's just get straight into the video. So before I do this, I want to remind y'all that this won't be as in-depth as my other videos, so keep that in mind. And these teams are not in any particular order, but the first team is the Golden State Warriors. Now, their major offseason moves was bringing in Nemanja Bjelica, I do not know how to pronounce his first name, who is a floor spacing big who fits like a glove in their system. They brought in Otto Porter Jr. for a steal of a contract and is a perfect player for this team, as he's a versatile 3-and-D player. And they also brought back Andre Iguodala, who was a part of that championship core. They also drafted the young guys Moses Moody and Jonathan Kuminga, and I'm not going to be able to say a whole lot about these guys, but I do know that Kuminga has a lot of two-way potential and that Moody is an exciting scorer and spark plug. Now, their key players heading into this season obviously starts with Steph, as he's looking to get another MVP and another ring to add to his growing collection. They're still waiting for Klay to come back, as we're all anxious to see if he'll return to form after suffering 2 major lower body injuries, and personally, I'll believe he'll be just fine. James Wiseman is coming off knee surgery, and we'll see if he can tap into that unicorn potential that Golden State saw in him. And personally, the most exciting player for me on this roster right now is Jordan Poole, who's looking like he's taking that next step, and it's going to be key to hold down that fort while Klay is gone. And even when he comes back, the scoring and shooting of Poole is looking crazy, and he's a prime candidate for MIP heading into this season. Overall, I think they'll be in prime position to be a top 5 team in the West, and especially if Klay comes back 100%, they can be dark horse contenders to win the whole thing. While Steph being Steph, Klay being Klay, and now they're going to get invited to the pool party. And, oh yeah, I forgot to talk about Draymond Green. Obviously, his offense has deteriorated a little bit. I mean, a lot. At this point, his shooting is non-existent, but defensively, everyone knows what he's going to bring. All-time great defender. I'm expecting great defense, maybe another depoy season this year. But yeah. Now, moving on to the next team is the Milwaukee Bucks, and their major offseason moves were bringing back George Hill, who's still a good 3-and-D guard for them and knows that system very well. They re-signed Bobby Portis on a very good contract, who was key for them in their championship run. And they signed guys like Semi Ojeleye, traded for Grayson Allen, and signed Rodney Hood to better their depth. Now, their key players are once again pretty obvious, with reigning Finals MVP Giannis, Chris Middleton, and Jrue Holiday, as this is the championship core along with Brook Lopez if you want to count him. Really, the key for them is to stay healthy, and if Giannis' jump shot is legit like we saw in the preseason, it might be wraps for the rest of the league. I predict they'll be the first seed and will be contending for back-to-back titles, especially if Kyrie doesn't play at all this season for Brooklyn. Next, the Memphis Grizzlies offseason was quite an eventful one, as they acquired Eric Bledsoe, Steven Adams, and the 10th pick from New Orleans, which turned into Zaire Williams. They later flipped Bledsoe for Patrick Beverley, Jarrett Culver, and Juan Hernan-Gomez. They got solid young talent and veterans to help the Grizzlies fight for another playoff spot this year. That's the perfect transition into their key players, as this team's playoff aspiration starts and ends with their high-flying leader, Ja Morant, who is looking to finally make his first All-Star appearance and establish himself as one of the best PGs in the league. Another building block is Triple J, Jaren Jackson Jr., who has been injured for a while now, but when healthy is one of the best young big men in the league, as he's already one of the best 3-point shooting big men in the league, and he hasn't even tapped into his defensive potential yet, as he recently got extended. There are other young guys like Dylan Brooks, Brandon Clark, and Desmond Bane should continue to improve so this team could start competing for real games and real playoff spots behind Ja and this Memphis squad. I predict they can maybe sneak into the playoffs once again, as they could finish as the 7th to 8th seed due to the play-in. Next up is the Dallas Mavericks, as their offseason was the opposite of Memphis, as they mostly stayed put with their current roster, as their really only major move was signing Reggie Bullock, who was terrific for the Knicks last season, as he's a perfect fit next to Luka as a 3-and-D guard. The other moves consisted of them re-signing players like Tim Hardaway Jr., Willie Cauley-Stein, and Boban Marjanovic. Their key player starts with Luka, who is looking to take that leap to possibly best player in the league territory with the MVP and a deep playoff run. But he can't do it alone, as he's going to need his partner in crime, Kristaps Porzingis, to show up this season and return to his all-star self once again. The team goes as far as these two take it. If all-star KP shows up for this team, they could be a top 3 seed in the West with Luka playing at an MVP level. But if KP disappoints once again or deals with another injury, the Mavericks could stay where they are at as a 5 to 6 seed and lose in the first round to better teams again for the third in a row, and could cause trouble in Dallas between them and Luka. Next is the Orlando Magic, as their offseason moves were very quiet, as it was all about the draft for them, as they traded away their old regime in Aaron Gordon, Nikola Vucevic, and Evan Fournier to officially start rebuilding. They still did sign some players like Robin Lopez and Mo Wagner just to fill out the roster. In the draft, they drafted lottery picks Jalen Suggs, who I'll talk about in a second, and Mo Wagner's brother, Franz Wagner. Moving on to their key players, it starts with Jalen Suggs, who I believe will get the keys to the offense, as he's a do-it-all guard, as he can just do about everything from passing to shooting and scoring. He overall has a very high floor and projects to be a solid to good starter for years to come. Other players like Markelle Fultz, Cole Anthony, and RJ Hampton are all clumped together, as Orlando has to figure out which young guards they want to keep. And they also have another young guy, Jonathan Isaac, as he's still there for people who forgot about him, as you know. And just forgetting about the anti-vaccine stuff for a second, he's one of the best defenders in the league when healthy, and is still developing as an offensive player with his handle and shooting. The organization has to figure out which young players they want to keep or throw out, and which ones they want to build around. And until they do that, I'm predicting they'll be a bottom 5 team in the East. Next up is the Brooklyn Nets, as their offseason consisted of getting a bunch of veterans who are trying to win a championship, or another word for it is ring chasing. I mean, it is what it is. They got solid veterans in James Johnson, who is a welcome addition to this roster, who can get any defense players they can get. They got back LaMarcus Aldridge from retirement, and I don't expect much from him, but they can still give you a nice scoring punch off the bench. Also, their best signing, in my opinion, was getting Patty Mills, who I think could contend for 6th Man of the Year and can fill in for Kyrie whenever he has one of his episodes, if you want to call it that. But moving on to their key players, it starts with their big 3 with KD, Harden, and Kyrie, as KD got extended a while back, as he's going to be here for the long haul, and really what's most important about these 3 is for them to stay together and be healthy, because if they can do that, they can be championship favorites for the next 3 to 4 years. And that's really my prediction, as if they all stay together and if Kyrie can get his stuff together, they could legitimately be a dynasty for this season, even though assuming that Kyrie won't play for the majority of the season. And if he doesn't play for the majority of the season, I'll say they'll be a top 3 seed, and even with Kyrie, they're still championship contenders and maybe even favorites. Next is the Miami Heat, as their offseason was headlined by the acquisition of Kyle Lowry from Toronto for Goran Dragic and Precious Achiuwa, who I'll be discussing in a minute. They also got hard-nosed veterans in Peter Tucker and Markieff Morris, who I think fit very well with this Heat culture, as they lost other players like Kendrick Nunn and Iguodala. They also re-signed Jimmy and Duncan Robinson on big deals to lock their roster in place for a couple more years. Now, moving on to the key players, it starts with Jimmy Butler, who after disappointing playoff performance against the Bucks has to prove to everyone that the bubble wasn't a fluke. Bam Adebayo is another player who is one of the best young stars in the league, and if he can improve his offensive bag a bit, this team could go even higher. Now, talking about Kyle Lowry, he fits perfectly in this Heat team as he embodies the culture and is a proven winner and leader, as he's another ball handler, shooter, and defender for this team, as he can push the pace for this team. Now, there are other young players like Tyler Hero and Duncan Robinson. It's going to be crucial for them if they want to be serious title threats alongside Brooklyn and LA. I project they can be at least a top 5 seed, which seems low, but I think the 3 to 6 seed is very close in terms of how good they are and talent-wise, and can be as high as the 3rd seed. And for their ultimate ceiling, I could see them making another conference finals appearance, but that's really how far I think they can go, because I just don't think they can have enough to beat like Brooklyn or Milwaukee. Now, moving on to our next team is the Charlotte Hornets, as their offseason acquisitions were quiet as they missed out on some of the bigger names who were rumored candidates to land there, like DeMar DeRozan and John Collins. In reality, they got Kelly Oubre, who is a solid 2-way wing for them, and Ish Smith, who's a solid PG for them in the rotation after trading away Devontae Graham. And they also re-signed Terry Rozier on a well-worth it contract. And on a side note, man, that light-skin energy between Kello and LaMelo, did I say Kello? I meant Kelly and LaMelo is gonna go crazy this season, bruh. But anyways, moving on to the key players, it starts with their young core of LaMelo Ball, obviously, PJ Washington, Miles Bridges, and the other draft guys they got, who I forgot to mention in the offseason additions, with guys like Kai Jones, James Bouknight, JT Thor, and Scotty Lewis. Basically, the need to continue to develop this young core, and LaMelo should continue to take that next step into becoming a consistent star for them, so they can finally make it into the playoffs, and God knows how long, ever since the Kemba Walker era. My prediction is that they could be fighting for a playoff spot at their best, and probably more like a play-in spot, especially if LaMelo can become an all-star this year. Next up in my previews is the Phoenix Suns, as their offseason was spent on keeping this roster together as they re-signed CP3, Mikal Bridges, Cam Payne, and Frank Kaminsky. Their only offseason additions were that of Landry Shamet, Elfrid Payton, and JaVale McGee. So yeah, as you can see, Phoenix prioritized keeping that finals-bound roster together, but one thing to look out for this team is the extension of DeAndre Ayton, as Bridges got one before Ayton, as they're both in the same draft class, and he's probably feeling some type of way about that. But moving on to their key players, Devin Booker is going to continue to get buckets and maybe, and I mean maybe, be a dark horse MVP candidate. Chris Paul is going to keep doing his point guard things, and this might finally be the season that we see some of that age crack through his armor. The other two young players, Bridges and Ayton, are key for them to return back to the finals, with Bridges expanding his game a bit more and embracing a more shot-creating role, while Ayton continues his defensive dominance while being more aggressive offensively and expanding his range even further to possibly the three-point line, as he started hitting some in the preseason and the season opener. I predict they'll be a top 3 seed once again, and we'll get to at least the second round of the playoffs with the Lakers, Warriors, and Clippers having uncertainty around them, at least in the regular season. Now, next up, we have the Minnesota Timberwolves, as their offseason didn't see them do much, as their main addition was that Patrick Beverley via a trade sending away Jarrett Culver and Juan Hernan-Gomez. I really like the signing, as every team needs a player like Beverley, who's just a straight-up dog and is another veteran's presence to help them make the playoffs once again. Other than that, Minnesota didn't do anything else, as their cap space didn't allow them, as they also re-signed Malik Beasley to a lucrative deal, as they couldn't just lose him for nothing. Their key players are who you would expect, with Cat, D'Lo, and Ant-Man, as they have the talent around them, and Cat should be good enough to lead this team to more wins. I think Ant could have a near all-star level season with that recent growth spurt and just overall getting better, and if D'Lo can stay healthy, then this team can be dangerous. They also have Jaden McDaniels, who I think doesn't get talked about enough, as I think he's a perfect fit next to Towns, and is going to continue to get better. I predict they'll be in the playoff. I predict they'll be in the play-in and will fight with teams like Memphis for those last few playoff spots. Alright, the last seed for this video. Yes, I'm going to split the last 22 teams into 2 parts, as it makes it easier for me and y'all have another video to look forward to. But anyways, I'm talking about the New Orleans Pelicans, as their offseason was pretty disappointing, as they got guys like Jonas Valanciunas, and Devontae Graham via trade, and Willie Hernan-Gomez and Garrett Temple through free agency, and also they re-signed Josh Hart. They drafted a dude named Trey Murphy, who I know very little of. Like I said, I am not a draft guy, so y'all stud it. All of these dudes are solid moves, but none of them scream a playoff push. I actually traded away Lonzo Ball, and the return was underwhelming to say the least. That doesn't bode well for this team, as there's more pressure for this team to fight for a playoff spot, or at least even the play-in, which is mostly from Zion himself, as there's been rumblings of him possibly wanting out. And speaking of Zion, that brings us to the key players, which starts and ends with Zion and Brandon Ingram, as these two are the main building blocks for this franchise moving forward. Zion had an historic sophomore season, and BI continued his efficient 25 points per game, but that didn't translate to enough success. And with the offseason that they had, that really did not help their case, as I predict they'll be fighting for a play-in spot but will fall short, as they finish like 11 or 12 seed, as Zion's health and weight issues are already a concern again, and this whole roster is just weird, and we don't know what their defense is going to look like, as I think offensively they'll be just fine. It's just on the defensive end, which is a mystery, and that really sums up this team as a whole, a mystery. But yeah, that's going to do it for today's video and my first part of the rest of the season previews, and I hope y'all did enjoy. If you did, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe if you're new, and don't forget to turn on post notifications. And all my social links are in the description below. But with that being said, I hope y'all have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.